Previously, on Palace of Mirrors. During a training match with Deathmask, Darien saw the image of a woman in the tattoo on his face. Something about this deeply unsettled the pirate, who threatened in that moment to kill Darien. Meanwhile, the ships that chased Bluebeard and his crew to Six have found them. And now, Season 1, Episode 22, Last of the Mahaji. Bluebeard ordered a meeting the day after the chase. The crew sat around an oval table under a domed glass ceiling. It would have been beautiful, a table under the stars. The true sea of the ship, not the clouds as claustrophobic as the walls of Darien's home. Under that strangling sky, everything in the room took on a gray pallor. Darien didn't feel as though he sat on a ship sailing through the sky. Instead, he sat in ruins, around a table of ghosts. They wore oblique expressions on their rough faces, the light having stolen all their edges, until only something sad and mysterious remained. Who had they all been, and how had they come to sit around this table, under this sky of all the skies in the universe? Bluebeard entered last, but the light changed even him. Under the clouded sky, he looked haggard, his beard untrimmed, and his eyes sunken. He looked haggard, but he did not look broken. He took a seat at the head of the table, Twilight and Dragoneye to either side. Gent, his usual wild smile muted, met Darien's gaze. With a start, Darien recognized the glint of a conspiratorial smile in the pirate's eyes. The quiet act of friendship calmed Darien. The other pirates looked unsettled and disordered. Bluebeard wore a stiff expression. Skeleton's eyes darted nervously around the room. Twilight's hands flexed open and closed, and Deathmask twitched as though he wanted to pace the room. Dragoneye fixed his mirror eye on Darien, and the room lurched until Darien looked away. The pirate's other eye surveyed the room, before landing on Night at Bluebeard's side. His face tightened a moment before relaxing. For their plan to work, Darien would have to stand and speak to these men who had broken long ago, who had become only sharp glass looking for someone, anyone, to cut. They wanted to draw blood, draw it from deep, draw it from the dark and hidden caverns within a body. Bluebeard straightened and spoke. I have called this palaver to discuss our current situation and to chart our course forward. We are hunted. We came to rest and to hide. He glanced at Dragoneye, but did not address him. But the enemy has followed. I believe the time has come to leave this world. The crew muttered to one another quietly. It is past time, said Deathmask to the room. We have taken the strongest this world has left to give. Let the ravages of time erase the rest. The room grew silent, but several heads around the table nodded their assent. If we're summoning the ravages of time, let us set it upon our enemies. The people of this world have enough to deal with as it is, and I have no grudge against them, replied Bluebeard. Time does not work itself upon the strong, muttered Deathmask. The Mahaji once numbered themselves amongst the strong, did they not? Deathmask sighed and closed his eyes. We were fools. He spoke in a growl and shook his head. Such fools. Bluebeard put up a hand. Forgive me. I did not mean to push on that old wound. Your point is taken. Our foes are strong. He put both hands on the table and looked up to the clouds before facing the room. I've received word that the consortium has been forced to abandon Edge. A cacophony of overlapping voices churned through the room. Darien felt a pulse of fear. He had seen the pirates vicious and bloodthirsty, but now he saw something more unsettling. An edge of desperation tinged their wild eyes. But, Bluebeard's voice silenced all it touched, But by the Palace of Mirrors, we will not slink with our tails between our legs. When we leave this world, we will not flee. We will fly like a wind unleashed from the gates of the Shadowlands. Dragon Eye grinned, his jaundiced teeth clenched between his lips. Will we? I'd rather thought we would all die here, to be buried in snow like so much rubble. The crew looked uncomfortably at one another. Even Bluebeard looked shocked at the words. Dragon Eye turned his grin from one pirate to the next. No one met his eyes. He landed on Bluebeard. I'm glad to be wrong, of course. I know all of you would much rather die tearing heads from your enemies. Shall I lay in a course away from this forsaken world? Yes, shouted Deathmask. Let us test our strength against theirs. Let the weak be vanquished to make way for the stronger circle. I'm in just so long as we do the vanquishing. I'm not fond of making way, said Gent. Deathmask sneered. You are nothing but a fractured thing. You may die now or you may die in a year, but one way or another you will make way in the end. Gent held a hand to his heart. Your concern is touching, Deathmask. I didn't know you cared. Silence, all of you! Twilight slammed a fist on the table, their reflections smeared into whorls of color by the vibration. We will follow where the captain leads. Darien studied Gent's face. He had looked just as vicious as the others during his exchange with Deathmask. He had not looked as though he had just been plotting to sink the ship out of the sky. The pirate wore many faces. He wore the clothes of a noble, but had the eyes of a jester. He cared for the ship as though it were a child, but he gave that same ship over to killers and thieves. He had befriended Darien, and even saved his life, but under a twilight sky he had threatened to hang him. Darien knew he had been serious. If Bluebeard had given the word that night, Gent would have strung the rope. Which of those roles belonged to the real man? Or did any of them? Before we test our strength, there is one last investment I must see through. Bluebeard pinned Darien down with a dagger of a smile. Spit face. Silence weighed the room down. The crew turned cold eyes on Darien. They stung like frozen rain against bare skin. He had to hold his breath to keep from gasping under their attention. Deathmask turned to Bluebeard. What about the boy? I know you harbor a fondness for him, but he is among the weak, and only an ignorant man keeps such a person close. We should drop him out the cargo door before we leave this place. Bluebeard pursed his lips. I'll let him speak for himself. He waved to Darien. Stand. Tell my men what you have plotted for them. Darien stood, legs shaking, and faced the crew. His tongue stuck to the top of his suddenly parched mouth. His pulse thundered in his ears, almost distracting in its volume. He became aware of the reeking sweat under his arms. He might as well be back in the circle, Fantasia facing him down. He thought of her eyes, as deep as the reflections within the pool where she died. The crew stared at him, their eyes narrowed and their lips tight. Words failed Darien. Their eyes felt like hands around his throat. The scars on their faces, daggers at their belts, and even their unwashed skin made it impossible to speak. What could he say to such killers? What could he say to those who had murdered Tom's family and taken Cassandra prisoner? Just as Darien prepared to sink, silent, back into his seat, Gent cleared his throat. Darien turned, a moth to a lantern. Gent, in a crisp red coat, with a ruffled blue shirt spilling out the front, smiled. It wasn't a pirate's smile, but the smile of a friend. Darien didn't have space to wonder if the smile was just another mask. He could only grasp on, desperate to stay afloat. Words came to his lips. They came softly, but they came. When you found me, I was just a boy with a sword I didn't know how to use. Bluebeard drew night. All eyes in the room turned to the sword. Dragoneye flinched at the sight of the blade, as though the very sight of it cut. Even in the cloying gray light of the clouds, the blade gleamed. "I should have been killed that day," said Darien in a rough voice. The room muttered assent. Darien pictured the tree looking down at him from the hill. That tree had nearly been his final resting place. At the time, he had been terrified. Now, thinking of the white petals dancing with the wind, he realized it wouldn't have been so bad a place to die. It would have been better than in a ruined temple beneath mountain shadows, better than the constricted corridors of the ship with its alien air, better than in this room, so close to the stars and so far. That sword came from a tower near the city, but I found more. I found gold, jewels, and technology beyond my reckoning. I had planned to escape this ship and return. Darien rubbed the scar Fantasia had left him. I know now that's impossible. I know one of you will kill me long before I have any chance to escape. So I have an offer. I'll lead you to that room, and in return, you let me leave this ship alive. Do you think we're fools? Deathmask stood. Pirates have pillaged this world for 500 years. All that remains are rocks and snow. All that remains are the bones of those who passed to make way for the stronger circle. You would have us believe you found the one building that has never been looted? Darien did not flinch at the spittle flying from Deathmask's mouth. Yes, he met the eyes of the crew one by one. There are many hidden places that remain, even now, 500 years after the fall. Pirates have been here, sure, but I don't think any of them ever expected to find much here. Deathmask shoved his chair back and circled the table, his eyes never leaving Darien. Gold, jewels, and yet you took only a sword you did not need and did not know how to use. Darien felt a surge of frustration at the pirate. Why did he care so badly whether Darien made it off the ship alive? What had Darien ever done to him? I thought maybe the sword would be useful on the road. Gold and jewels meant nothing to me. He saw Gent flinch and realized too late his mistake. To the pirates, nothing held more value than treasure. They lived for it, had staked their lives on it. I mean, Darien stammered, trying to find the threads of his lie, like the words of a story that had wandered from the point. I always meant to go back. The sword was just something easy to carry, but I always planned to return for the rest. Deathmask laughed and pointed at Darien. But you just said gold and jewels meant nothing to you. Nothing. Gold, jewels, technology beyond your reckoning. All this time, Bluebeard has wasted his time trying to train you. But really, we should have been holding you for ransom. Clearly, your family has more wealth than you ever let on. The room broke into laughter, and Darien realized he had lost the crew. He twisted his hands together, as though grasping for an answer, and took a half step back. A funny image, for sure. Gent stood and nodded to Deathmask. As though any of these farmers have wealth that any of us would recognize. Potatoes, on occasion. Carrots, I may have seen one or two in a sack after that last raid. Clothing, well, as long as you don't mind rough-spun hemp, they are indeed wealthy. Skeleton chuckled, though he choked when Deathmask's ire turned his way. We shouldn't dismiss Spitface if you ask me. Who did? Growled Dragoneye. Gent ignored him and continued. We've had better years. Every world we've been chased away. Even here, where we've always been safe, the Order chases us. So it seems to me we could use a little luck. We could use treasure. Even if he exaggerates, and let's face it, he'd be a fool not to, we might find something of value. As it is, all we have are a pitiful collection of slaves that won't even earn back the cost of the torpedoes we fired the other day. Deathmask stalked toward Darien. You would lead us straight to the very city where our pursuers are based. You would argue a bird that it flew in the sky. Gent flapped his hands. But Spitface has proved adept at stumbling on the unlikely. How else could he have stumbled on our little hideout, well beyond the pitiful remnants of habitation? I tell you all now, nothing good will come if we follow the boy. Just because Bluebeard dressed him like one of us and put a sword in his hand does not mean he is one of us. Gent chuckled. And what if he is lying to us? What possible harm could he do? As you already pointed out, Deathmask, the boy is among the weak and all that. You can't be telling me you fear this child. He's lying to us, you say? Then we kill him. Simple as that. I'll slice his throat myself. Deathmask touched his hand to his face for an instant and turned to the crew. You can't be falling for this man's honeyed words. They're as false as the clothing on his back. Deathmask slammed both fists on the table. 2 of our number lie dead by his hand. Will we give him the blade to strike down the rest? The room splintered into argument. Half the crew wanted to strike out immediately and seek bloody retribution on the order. The other half refused to leave even the slightest possibility of loot behind. Silence, ordered Bluebeard. I've made up my mind. We will let Spitface take us to his tower. Should he lead us astray, I'll slaughter him with his own sword. He swung Knight in a low arc that left the pirates nervously brushing their throats. He met Darien's eyes. They stared at one another. With a deep breath, Bluebeard sheathed Knight, looked to the sky, and started for the door. The song of drawn steel brought him up short. I've let you lead me for long enough. Deathmask held his sword to Darien's neck. All eyes faced him. All eyes save Bluebeard's alone. The captain did not so much as turn from the door. His hand rested, relaxed, on Knight. Has the day really come? You can still take your seat and follow my orders. You've become an old man with an old man's weakness. Deathmask's hand shook. Blood tickled as it dripped down Darien's neck. You can't even see this child is lying to your face. Bluebeard turned now. His lips quirked into the edge of a smile. I see more than you think. I'll give you just one more chance. I owe you that much. Sit and be silent. Bow to the strength of the greater circle. Deathmask spat at Bluebeard's feet. You know nothing of the greater circle. I know I defeated you and all your people. I know you submitted yourself. Deathmask lowered his sword an inch from Darien's neck. I was just a child. His voice shook. You killed my parents. You killed my sisters and my brothers. You killed everyone I ever cared about. All of them, from the strongest to the weakest, deserved the circle more than you, more than me. That may be, said Bluebeard, but they are gone, and we two stand here now. All my life I have waited for the strength to put you where you belong. All my life it has eluded me. Now I see what I should have seen all along. I was never going to be strong enough to defeat you, and I was never going to find my way to the next circle. But I can do one thing. I can do to you what you did to me. I can take away the thing you love. Deathmask's sword returned to Darien's neck, and Bluebeard's face sharpened, even as the warmth drained from his eye. In that instant, so short it could not hold even a single beat of Darien's heart, he saw the man who had hunted Arlinda for so many years. Everyone had grown so still. Night drew with a whisper, soft as the whisper of death on Cathy's lips. Darien feared his pulse would push against the sword at his neck. Sweat stung his eyes, but he dared not blink it away. Even that movement might give the sword purchase on his skin. Will you prove your strength by murdering the boy? No, Deathmask's voice shook. I have no strength to prove. That was clear since the day I dropped my sword at your feet. So let the boy go. I give you my word. You can take your revenge on me. As you said, I'm an old man. What do I have to live for? Deathmask twitched, and another drop of blood rolled down Darien's neck. You're lying. How could I possibly believe you would do that? Bluebeard shrugged. Would you rather kill Darien? Or would you rather take a chance killing me? The captain set knight on the table and held his hands up. Deathmask lowered his sword from Darien. Before the blade had even settled at his side, Bluebeard moved with the fury of a storm front. Deathmask scrambled to raise his blade back up, but Bluebeard knocked it aside with a dagger he had drawn as he charged. The captain shoved Darien aside and embraced Deathmask, the blade of his dagger glistening out of the man's back. Blood sprayed across the faces of the crew. The vibrant crimson blade contrasted with the dim gray of the clouds above. You should never have touched the boy, Bluebeard whispered as he lowered Deathmask to the floor. Deathmask coughed up bright blood and held his hands to the wound. Face growing pale and clammy, he looked down at the blood welling up between his fingers. He looked up at Bluebeard. So this is it? Bluebeard nodded, his face somber. I knew I wouldn't, but I had hoped. Tears rolled down his face, and he caught Darien's eyes. Tell me, he rasped, do you still see her? Is she still beautiful? Darien knelt and nodded. The woman sat drawn in ink beside a mountain road. She wept silently, and now Darien thought he understood why. She wept for Deathmask, who had lost his way and who now lay dying. Deathmask opened his mouth, as though to speak, but only a long hiss escaped his lips. His body stilled, and he became a shape, inanimate and carved of flesh. As his face stilled, the tattoos on his face animated in a swirl of ink. A man walked up the road and stopped before the woman, who looked up and wiped the tears from her face. She took him by the hand, and he pulled her up next to him. They stood, lines of ink on Deathmask's pallid skin. They held one another. They held one another tight. They had been sundered by death, and now by death they could walk side by side once more. Together they walked up the road, past flowers of blood, and disappeared behind the mountains. Bluebeard's voice broke the silence that had taken the room after Deathmask's final breath. Let this be a reminder to any who would challenge me. He looked from Darien to Dragon Eye and strode from the room. The pirates sat in silence, Deathmask's blood pooling at their feet. No one stood. No one looked to the door. Deathmask stared up from the floor with empty eyes. Bluebeard stood alone in his office beneath the painting of the ship in the storm. He stared up like a man looking for something he knew he would never find. Darien walked quietly into the room. Gent had begged him not to risk the plan, and had promised that if things went south because of Darien's idiocy, he would personally push him out the airlock. Darien had only smiled, not because he doubted his friend, but because he believed him. Still, he couldn't shake Deathmask's dead eyes. He had known, when they left the conference room, that he would have to confront Bluebeard. He had too many questions for the captain, and not much time left to ask them. Bluebeard did not turn to face Darien. What are you doing here? He waved his hand to the door. Leave me in peace. I've given you the rope to hang yourself. I'll not give you any more. Darien shook. The cut on his neck stung beneath the bandage Gent had applied. The pain reminded him just how close Deathmask had come to spilling his life out onto the floor. Somehow, though, all he could think about were the pirate's final desperate words. All he could see were his eyes, so afraid he had seemed a different man altogether in his final moments. Do you know why he tried to kill me? Bluebeard's body tensed, but he only shrugged. No, he said. All I can say is you seem to have a way with my crew. I had noticed, said Darien, as he stepped up beside the captain. The men in the painting clung to the ship against the wall of wind and water. Bluebeard reached up, his fingers not quite touching the canvas, and traced the lines of the ship. Bluebeard sighed and rubbed his face. What difference does it make now? He's dead. I killed him. He was probably the last, you know. The last of the Mahaji. I always knew this day would come, from the very moment I met him all those years ago in that temple. Darien frowned. What do you mean you always knew? Did he tell you about the tattoo on his face? Darien thought back to the strange lesson Deathmask had given him in the sparring ring. Some, Darien thought of the final image, the way it had come to life even as the pirate died. What he said didn't make much sense. He said they were magic, and he asked me about the woman they depicted. He spoke as if he couldn't see her at all. Bluebeard stiffened. The woman? You could see her? For the first time, Bluebeard turned to face Darien. I think I know why he wanted you dead after all. He didn't speak to many about the tattoo. The death mask of a Mahaji is a very private thing. Of course, for that very reason, the crew called him by that name. They knew it would get under his skin. It wasn't proper, and there is nothing a pirate loves more than the improper. If it was private, why did he wear it on his face? What do you think the others saw there? Darien felt an edge of impatience enter his voice. A woman sitting by a mountain road. What else would they see? No, Darien. The others saw only lines black and tangled. They saw a mask. According to the legends of the Mahaji, only one person in the universe could see through that mask. Goosebumps prickled Darien's skin. Only one? He touched himself lightly on the chest. Why me? Bluebeard shook his head, a wry smile bringing a hint of color to his face. I wish I knew. I had always thought no other could see her. The day I confronted Deathmask in the temple, I saw through his mask, as I had seen through all the others. Darien studied Bluebeard's face. But you just told me. Aye, only one. The one who will take their life and continue to the stronger circle. Only that one in all the universe can see through the death mask of a member of the Mahaji. So, how could we both see it? I don't know what it means. The Mahaji did not spread their teachings and traditions with outsiders. Bluebeard shook his head with a sigh. The day I defeated Deathmask, he told me that one day he would grow strong enough to kill me. He lived for that moment, but I knew it would never come to pass. Could never come to pass. I knew I would kill him in the end, whatever journey our lives took us on. You never told him? No, I never told him. At first I kept the secret because he was useful. That was before I killed Arlinda, and I could think of nothing else. Later I kept the secret because I had come to care for him, because I came to feel responsible for him, because I didn't want him to die, and I knew if I told him it would end his life as surely as any sword. Darien wondered if the men in the painting felt them watching. He wondered if, even as the storm drove them into the waves, they felt a prickling on the back of their necks. Soaked and shivering, did they cry out to the ones who watched? Do you believe all that about the masks? I do. The Mahaji is a very ancient order. Some say its source lies far before the dawn of humanity. Yet, even after all this time, few outsiders know much about them. As far as I know, no one has ever had a chance to study the ink in their tattoos. Or maybe the knowledge has just been lost. Darien stepped back from Bluebeard and peered up into his face. "And is it true, what you said? He was the last? You really did kill all the rest of them?" Darien regretted the words. He didn't want to hear the truth. He didn't want to know what Bluebeard had done. Looking into the man's eye, Darien realized he wanted Bluebeard to be someone other than he had been. He wanted the captain to be the hero, not the villain. The words had already left his lips. He couldn't take them back. They hung in the air. Bluebeard's lips tightened, as though trying to hold his voice inside. "My arrival shocked them. Deathmask told me it had been generations since anyone uninvited stepped foot in the temple. I looked into their faces and saw through their masks. I saw moons looking down on forgotten forests. I saw a lone tree in a barren wasteland, a boy huddled and alone beneath it. I saw great beasts in alien oceans. I saw cities crowded with people. I even saw a sailing ship, like a memory of my childhood, fighting through a storm. I saw many things in those faces. I remember them all. They haunt my dreams, good and bad." Bluebeard took a breath, held it, released it with a sigh. "I shocked them, but they remembered the way. They treated me with reverence, for they believed only the strong could find that temple. They led me to a chamber sealed by a great stone door, an inner sanctum. Inside, I found the purest darkness I had ever known, and within that darkness, something darker still. Something not just an absence of light, but something that swallowed it. Something alive, or something that acted alive. It circled me, and I felt a mind there. It studied me as my mind filled in the darkness. I imagined myself at the shores of an ocean." Bluebeard shook his head. "To say I imagined isn't accurate, though. It's as though what my mind painted on that dark canvas became true. I heard waves crashing on the shore. I felt the breeze. I even smelled the pungent salt. And the thing that circled me, it took the shape of old Captain Hooknose. Blood, black and putrid, stained his stomach. Intestines hung from the opening where I had run him through with my sword. They dragged behind him as he circled me. His breath came in great rattling gasps, cold and stinking. He spoke, but it wasn't his voice. It was a voice that brought me back to long ago days, when I was just a small child alone in my room in the dark. I felt small. My skin prickled with goosebumps, a sheen of sweat on my skin chilling me through. That voice, the voice of the darkness itself, spoke, and all the images my mind had conjured collapsed into themselves. I stood alone in the black once more and listened. And when the dark shadow in that place promised me I would have Arlinda's life only if I could prove my strength against its followers, yes, I killed them all. The old man trembled, as though he were a tree in the breeze, and sank to his knees with his head bowed, as though in prayer to the painting. Darien looked down at the man he had always had to look up to see. Bluebeard had a large, knotted body of muscle and scar, but in that moment he looked as small as the boy he had described in the dark room. Darien put his hand on Bluebeard's back, wanting only to comfort him, and felt it shake with silent sobs. Grief shaped the captain's face, but no tears stained his skin, and Darien wondered if the pirate had any left. Did the men in the painting feel as hopeless as Darien in that moment? He wondered if the sound of creaking boards and snapping rigging filled them with dread. Did the smell of the roaring ocean air mix with the sweet scent of rain to bring tears to their eyes? Where did they find the strength to keep fighting the storm, so much bigger than they? Words came to him, unexpected as a beam of sunlight through the storm. "Why are you still doing this? Why are you still a pirate?" Bluebeard's body stilled. "To defeat Arlinda, I played a part. I took on the role of the ruthless space pirate. It was the only way." He looked at Darien straight in the eye. "There comes a point, lad, when you've played a role long enough, that thing becomes you, and you become it. It's why Gent dresses as he does. He clings to the trappings of nobility so that maybe he will become so himself." "But he's still a pirate," Darien said, "no matter what he wears. You were something else once. You told me yourself. It must still be there under all the scars. You could—" No, you don't understand. Whoever else I once was, I slaughtered him and threw his body to the sea. I am a pirate. The day I killed Arlinda, I decided to kill myself. I went to run myself through with the sword that had taken her life. But when it came down to it, my body betrayed me. I'd been a pirate too long, and a pirate is, if nothing else, a survivor." Darien, frustration rising up his chest like fire, grabbed Bluebeard by the shoulders. "Is that what you meant to do to me?" He knelt down to look Bluebeard straight in the face. "Did you mean for me to play this role until I became like you?" Nausea overwhelmed him, and he staggered from the captain. Was this what it felt like to go overboard? He moved to the door. He had to get out of this room, to get off this ship. "No!" Bluebeard reached out for him. "No, never that. Just the opposite. I hoped you would make me something more like you." Darien froze, his hand on the door. "Do you think that could ever happen? Every night I hear the echo of the prisoners in the cells. You have me sorting stolen toys. Do you think I could change you when every morning I wake breathing the air of this ship, sickening and alien, making me cold, always so cold?" He looked over his shoulder at Bluebeard. "Do you think I could change you when you've turned my whole life inside out?" Bluebeard heaved himself to his feet. "Things would have changed," he pointed to Darien. "With you by my side, I could have changed." Darien took a step toward Bluebeard. "If you want to change, leave this ship. If you want to change, just change. Stop using me as your— what? Your excuse? Your reason to just keep going? Because you have me here, and somehow having me here makes everything okay. Stop. Just stop." Bluebeard gaped at him. Darien turned. He should have walked out the door the first time he arrived on the ship. Whatever the consequences, he shouldn't have accepted Bluebeard's friendship and guidance. He knew that now. Just before his hand hit the button to open the door, Bluebeard bowled him over from behind. They spilled together to the floor. Darien was fast and flexible, but Bluebeard had the weight of muscle and experience. The captain quickly pinned him down. "Let me tell you something." The captain shook with the force of his words. "We both know we'll find nothing in that tower of yours. Nothing but dust and ruin. I don't know what you have planned, but I do know that on that day I'll be what I've been for so many years." His voice dropped to a rough whisper. "I think maybe this is the last horrible thing I can do. Don't make me do it. Stay." Darien's face felt cold with tears. He didn't know if they were his, or if Bluebeard had in fact found some in a deep place, long lost. "No." Bluebeard let him go. Darien struggled to his feet. "I don't know why I ever thought you would change. You'll survive, no matter what happens to me." Darien opened the door and stepped to the threshold. He left the old man alone with the storm. Next episode on Palace of Mirrors. In the first part of the season finale, Darien and Gent must destroy the engine of the Kraken and bring the ship out of the sky. But Bluebeard is ready. and the engine of a starship is not a simple thing to destroy. Thank you for listening to Palace of Mirrors. If you liked the show, please give it a 5-star rating on your platform of choice and share it with anyone you know who might enjoy it. I truly appreciate your support. This podcast was produced, written, and narrated by Matthew Lindquist, with music by Nature's Eye on Pixabay.